everybody, and welcome again to another edition of the Modern Farming Podcast, where agriculture meets education, innovation, and outreach.
We're your hosts, Chris and Tara, and together we're growing knowledge about the world that feeds us.
That's right, Tara. And today we've got a really interesting guest. His name is Phil Blom. He is the CEO and owner of Bioenergy Innovation Global Inc. It's a mouthful. He calls his company Big, and he's big into biochar. So we're going to hear about his product and how it impacts agriculture and the earth. So I'm really excited to hear from Mr. Phil.
So am I.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So Phil, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got going with your company.
Well, I've been in the agriculture business my whole life. Grew up in ag on a farm, and we were one of the early pioneers of artificial insemination. We had a dairy farm, and we did a lot of bovine genetic work around the country. Did that for almost 25 years. We sold that to the largest genetic company in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, called CMEX. And then we had a small farm and dabbled around with farming, but we wanted to keep doing other things. So we did real estate for 10 years and liked it. But, it wasn't my roots. And I heard about this biochar through an engineer that was a mechanical, electrical, and an environmental engineer. And he did some work in the charcoal industry and was telling me about the benefits of biochar back in 2008, 2009. And of course, that's when we had a slowdown in real estate, so I was looking for something else to do and did quite a bit of research on it on my own and decided this is an industry that's going to have some real potential. So we've been doing it for quite some time.
So, for the listeners that are unfamiliar with biochar, could you tell us and explain to us what it is and how it's made?
Yes. Biochar is predominantly made from wood waste streams. We don't cut down trees to make biochar. We get it from storms, wood that comes into sawmills, the slabs, the sawdust. We use that waste wood for energy, and then instead of burning it to ash, how it's been done traditionally for years, or your big, large-scale biomass power plants, we've always burnt it to the end. Now that biochar has been discovered, you can still get a tremendous amount of energy. You just burn it to its highest fixed carbon content, and you cool it down, and then you recycle it back into the planet. We do a lot of work with soil, so a lot of this material goes in the soil. But I do want to make it clear that we don't cut down trees unless it's a thinning process to manage timber. But there's so much wood waste, and there's not just wood waste that we can use. We can use, like in Florida, we could use peach pits. In California, we can use nut hulls, pistachio, almond, walnut hulls. There's a variety of biomass streams that we can use that have high lignin to give us a higher quality carbon. I mean, we can even use farm waste, corn stalks, stuff like that. So there's a variety of biomasses. They all have their certain characteristics of carbon from the different biomass, but most of it we use currently is wood. That could be softwood, hardwood, doesn't matter.
And that's really interesting.
So we cook it. We don't burn it. Basically, we cook the water off first, and there's a lot of oils and gases left. That's why when you see a big bonfire take off, there's a lot of energy being released. So that's the energy that helps produce the energy. And then once we get the uh, oils and gases removed, well, then that's where we want to be. And we want to be around the 76 minimum is our minimum fixed carbon content. We have carbons as high as 94%. So the higher the carbon content, actually, the more value.
And what is that? Where is that carbon in agriculture going then? What is that value to the grower?
The big value to the grower is that, and it's hard for farmers to really get their head around this material because it's relatively new. Our industry is only about 20 years old, but your labile carbon, which would be like your compost, your corn stalks, anything that's residue from your field, it goes back into the soil, right? Uh, and that material is going to be utilized in the soil in about 3 to 4 years. Well, because of the process of making biochar in an enclosed environment with a lot of heat, with little oxygen, similar to making charcoal, if you understand the process of making charcoal, um, that's a very long-term fixed carbon. So it's going to stick around in your soil for hundreds of years, possibly thousands of years, depending on the soil and depending on how much you're tilling the soil. If you're going into golf courses, going back into uh, uh, forestry, where you're not ripping the ground up every year, you're not disturbing that 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 living reef soil biology. And the thing about biochar that's unique is that it's a structure. And when it comes out of the processor, it's pretty much an inert because it went through about a 1400 degree heat. So, and then it gets cooled, okay, and quenched. And it has a really unique pore structure with a lot of openings and pores. And not only because it's, so to speak, kind of semi petrified, but what happens when the soil reef life, the biome, the microbes, your bacteria and fungi, all the way up to your worm populations, when they move into that matrix, it's like a condo hotel for them animals, for those microscopic microbes. And they're the ones that actually are the workhorses that break the nutrients down to feed your plants. So, typically your straight NPK don't go right to the roots of the plant. A lot of people think that's how it works, but it's the soil living reef that does that. So when you add biochar to the soil, you're providing like long-term housing for that biochar or for those microbes, excuse me, to proliferate, grow, and work. I guess a good example that I tell farmers is if you're seeing an old house in the country or the city and it's been sitting there for 30, 40 years, nobody's lived in it, might have been an estate, might have been a trust. And what's happening to that carbon structure? It's literally falling apart. There's trees growing through the front porch, the windows are out, the roof is sagging. Well, that's because if you look at above ground and say that we were the microbe, humans were living in that carbon structure and we maintained that structure. We didn't eat the house, but we lived in the house. And it works the same way in soil with microbes for what biochar does in the soil. And so it's hard for the natural farmer to understand the long life that this carbon will do in the soil, and it's going to continually absorb water and release water absorb nutrients and release nutrients. And the microbes play a major role in that. So it does a lot of unique things. It just depends on what application that you're using it for.
I was just going to ask about the applications. How does the farmer apply it to their ground? I was looking through some different researches on biochar, and like they put it in the ground before they put their crop.
Yeah, the best way to use the biochar products is either through a high quality composting operation where you're taking um, different recipes of waste streams like food waste, grass trimmings, leaves, wood, coffee grounds, cotton gin waste. I mean, there's a variety of waste streams that can go into composting. And the more ingredients you have, the higher quality the compost will be. However, that all is basically a live carbon, and that material is pretty much going to be gone in the soil in 3 or 4 years. When you add uh, a biochar to that recipe, and it can be anywhere from 5 to 50% uh, of the total mass, it's going to absorb all those nutrients and organic matter during the composting process. So it's going to store that food for the microbes. And the unique thing about when you're adding an enrichment of materials to make a high quality compost versus, say, just straight wood, you're getting a lot of trace minerals, you're getting a lot of macro minerals, you're getting NPK, um, and biochar will absorb everything in its pathway, good or bad. Okay, it's just that's what it does. It has a tremendous amount of surface area, and so in an ideal world, the best way to incorporate this for farmers is one way is to mix it in with a composting operation and then spread it all at the same time when they spread compost. Now, our company has done quite a bit of work uh, on CAFOs, which are animal confined units, as in turkey, chicken, beef, dairy, where you have a lot of animals under one barn or one area. And there's a lot of urine and there's a lot of manures that get compiled up. So when you add biochar to that media, you can put it right in the facility of the barn, or you can mix the biochar and compost it when they take it out of the barns. We like to put it in the barns if we can convince the integrators or the companies that help manage those, or they're they're a little fussy about that because they either use sawdust, rice hulls, straw, and since this is something different, we have to educate people. So the biggest problem in the biochar business now is education because it's still a new industry. But when you put biochar in, it will absorb a lot of the organic nitrogen that's coming from those birds. And I don't know if you've ever been in a poultry barn or an egg laying barn, but you struggle to get a
A breath.
breath of air.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Ammonia gas is so extreme.
Yes.
So biochar, because it's absorbing everything, the organic matter, the nutrients that are left over in the manure that the animals could not digest, and that's true of any animal, including humans. We just can't break all that nutrition down 100% because our stomachs just can't take it all. So there's a lot of leftover nutrition, and ammonia, urine that's all organic nitrogen. That's not synthetic nitrogen from urea or anhydrous ammonia made from natural gas. This is the real McCoy. And so biochar will absorb those nitrogens, and it can absorb up to 50% of the nitrogen in that barn. Now, it could do, if it was absorbing strictly nitrogen in a beaker, it could absorb up to 85, 90%. But since it's absorbing all the other matter, the organic matter and the nutrients and the trace elements, it can only absorb up to that amount. But that's still a huge amount of nitrogen to be absorbed. So it helps the air quality in the barn for the animals. Number one, it's going to have them better lung capacity. It's going to be easier on their mitochondria system. It's not going to stress them out as much. And so when you take that manure out of the barn, then you compost it, and you literally need to break that down. And you don't have to use a sophisticated compost machine to do that. You can do that just with your tractor and loader bucket. And it's a very simple process. We do it all the time. But then when you spread that manure like it's traditionally done, the biochar is already in it. So what we're trying to do is eliminate the extra handling of putting the material on by itself. And it's not best to put biochar on the ground, so to speak, empty. We want to load it with and activate it with organic matter and nutrients because, like I told you a little bit ago, that it will absorb everything in its pathway, good or bad. And we do a lot of work in the bioremediation market where we're actually grabbing, heavy metals and negative things, chemicals out of the soils in bad areas. But in this case, we're trying to bring nutrients to the soils and long-term storage carbon. So now when we have that loaded carbon that's in that manure or that compost and it gets applied to the ground, it's better if you're cropping your ground to maybe work it in the ground a little bit. But if you have pasture ground, the actual earthworms in the soil will take it in. It's just that you don't want to put that on your forage, your grass ground if it's completely eaten down because you want to have the forage hold it there in case you have a big rain. But then that nitrogen is going to slowly release into that plant because nitrogen is a gas, whether it's organic or synthetic, doesn't matter. So you want that nitrogen to last a while, and that biochar will help that lasting feed to feed plants. So you get a lot of kicks of the cat when you mix it with manures because you're getting it activated with those materials, and it's going to last longer, and it's going to do a lot more good for your soil. It's going to increase not only your yield but your quality of yield.
So for the people that, so if I sum up what you said, for the people that aren't familiar with it, biochar is not taking the place of fertilizer. It's
No.
enhancing the effectiveness of all that you're doing. Is that correct?
Yes. It makes things better. And, I think there will be a time and place where fertilizer companies will be putting this in with their fertilizer. But we're tackling a root of a bigger problem of all the manures that are being spread, and then it leaches off into the streams and into the waterways, and we need to eliminate that by composting that material, breaking it down, and putting less on it but a higher concentration. And the biochar will help absorb those. Biochar also has such a structure that it will also help for soil erosion. And so if you build more organic matter in your soil, you're building more life in your soil. And the soil reef needs a certain amount of organic matter for it to really be proficient. The more organic matter you have in your soil, the less input cost you're going to need for fertilizers and chemicals. It's just, you know, common fact.
So there's an economic benefit too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, biochar, if you took dried down biochar was 5% moisture and you put it in a beaker and you added water to it, it'll hold 6 times its weight in water.
Wow.
That's
And
And
impressive.
release.
here's another interesting fact for soil people. For every 1% organic matter that you add to your soil, it will hold an additional 20,000 gallons of water on that 1 acre and release it.
Hmm.
So it will store the water and release it when it's needed. So organic matter has been grossly underrated by, uh, I think, the soil industry, because they're in business to sell fertilizers and chemicals, and which we need, but we don't need as much of them if we would build our organic matter up first. For an example, uh, you take states like the southern states, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. You have a lot of sand, so your organic matter would be lucky if you're 1%. Now, there's pockets of Florida that have really high organic matter, don't get me wrong. But you take the Midwestern states, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, you're looking at one time, we were around 8% organic matter. Now, there's still organic matter that high in pockets of the areas. And it's mostly the people that are putting their manures back on the ground because they're putting organic matter on the ground. Um, your gentlemen farmers that are doing strictly chemical and synthetic fertilizers, they're losing gain on their organic matter, even though they do produce more corn and they do have more stocks that can feed that organic matter, but it's hard to get them stocks to break down when your organic matter is lower because you don't have the biological reef there. So organic matter is a very key component to healthy soils, and I think anybody will agree with me on that.
I was looking at your different things on your website there, and was surprised to see it can go in food and it could be digested by animals.
Yeah, a lot of European countries have approved it. Uh, we have customers we sell it as a soil, and they're putting it in some of their livestock rations and getting along extremely well. Um, it doesn't take much, only like 1% into their TMR ration, but it does a lot. The stomach of an animal and the soil has a lot of same functions. It's just a different biome of microbes. You if you can get your stomach to work very efficiently, you're going to utilize your food much more efficiently. Same thing in soil. If you have good microbes in your soil breaking your nutrients down, they're going to feed your crops more efficiently. So there's not a whole lot of difference between an animal and soil. It's just a different biome of microbes.
So your product is called Terra Char, and can you tell us a little bit about how you got that interesting name for your product, and tell us a little bit about what makes your product unique or interesting?
Yeah, so we did a lot of thought process on our brand. We wanted to, you know, there's a lot of differences in biochars depending on the biomass streams, different carbon content, different surface area. different hydrogen carbon ratios. So we wanted to have a brand uh, with specific boundaries to be known for a quality product. We came up with the name Terra Char through uh, um, a soil that was identified in the Amazon when there was a lot of research on biochar called Terra Preta, Preta. And if you ever get a chance, you should Google Terra Preta. It's a pretty enlightening story of how the indigenous Indians built their soils up in the Amazon basin back 4 or 5 thousand years ago. So we took that name Terra and then added the name Char on it, and that's how we came up with the name because we thought it had a unique history to it. Um, so our brand is our minimum fixed carbon is 76% that we run through that brand. We do have some people that request lower carbons, and we do market some of those, but we don't run them through that brand name. Um, our highest carbon content's up in the 94, 95%. It actually comes from a eucalyptus wood, a hardwood eucalyptus. Um, we we also look at the hydrogen carbon ratio. We look at the surface area, and so we have those standards to meet. So when we sell a product, we have analysis data of everything of what we're marketing to the to the industries. So we've been doing a lot of work in the soil markets. There's more markets now being developing into industry that are coming on. And then, of course, the carbon credits are some of these, the volunteer carbon credits is what is kind of impacted some of the recent growth in the last 2 or 3 years of the biochar industry.
So biochar is a potentially application as energy. Can you tell us about that side of the industry?
Well, yeah, there's still some energy left in carbon. A lot of the wood pellets that go to Europe now are torrefied, so they're only about 30% carbon, um, and they're not. They use that for the power plants in Europe, and there's a lot of wood that goes from this country over there, and we should be keeping it here and turning it on to biochar and building our soils. But there's a lot of markets for it. In industry, we're looking at asphalt uh, that's been approved by the carbon credit registries. Well, a couple of them, not all of them, but they're starting to open that door. There's concrete is in the works. I think the metallurgical market, they use carbon when they make steel. It takes the impurities out of the steel. So there's a lot of when you get your head around carbon. I mean, it's everywhere, and we just we just haven't really, as a society, we really haven't really looked at the value of carbon and the uses of carbon. But if you really study carbon, there is a lot of use of carbon, over 800.
So do you see this in the next 5 to 10 years, kind of really carbon and your Terra Char products starting to really grow?
Oh
And
yeah.
and what do you see that excites you coming down the road?
Well, I see that um, you know the there is organizations, the United States Biochar Initiative, based in Portland, Oregon. I think they moved to the Washington D.C. now. You also have the International Biochar Initiative. Um, they have those annual conventions once a year, and they're very optimistic about the industry. Um, I think the industry is going to do nothing but grow. Um, you know, I don't know if you understand the carbon credits, but basically these are volunteer carbon credits. So you have companies like Microsoft, Shopify, some of the airlines. They use a tremendous amount of energy for their data centers, for example. So they're contributing these credits because of the use of the power that they use, and that goes into the production of biochar as a credit. And so a lot of these industries are using carbon for a variety of things. So it becomes a circular economy. Instead of taking carbon out of the ground, we're taking carbon above ground and utilizing it instead of putting it in landfills or burning it or using it for mulch. There's nothing wrong with using it for mulch, but it is degrading and still putting off a methane gas or a gas. But there's so many uses to recycle carbon versus taking it out of the ground, which most of the carbon that we've been doing for decades is coming from full carbon, active, as you well know, activated carbon. So you can use a lot of the same uses uh, with above ground waste stream, like the description I gave you earlier. Yeah, I hope I explained that well enough to get you a basic understanding.
Yeah, it sounds good.
I think so, because I'm coming from no understanding at all, and I'm kind of getting enlightened here, and I definitely like that. Learning more about sustainability and
Well,
environment.
you know, you can go to Google or Safari or AI chat and ask about biochar and biochar industries, and there's a wealth of information online um, to kind of get you up to speed. I mean, it's out there now, so uh, we got the buzz going.
Well, in that form line right there, how important is the research and the data that demonstrates the biochar's benefits?
We've got global data from around the world. Uh, Europe has actually got more data than we do in the United States, but we've accumulated a lot of data, and I'd be willing to share that at any time. You guys are based kind of out of Florida, and um, I spend about 4 months a year in Florida now, so we're spending a lot more time working with the University of Florida. We've got a couple of years of data in citrus. We got a current one going of citrus. We'll be doing some with bamboo, and I'd like to share that with you with another podcast with some of my associates, so you actually have peer review data that we can share for your market in that region of the country.
Yeah,
Sounds
that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So we can certainly provide that for you for your listeners.
I know there's a lot of people that would be interested in that data. Cool.
Yeah. It's out there, and in fact, if you like, I've got a peer review uh, database that was put together by a team of biochar experts around the world. It's actually 112 research papers packaged into one document. It's about 60 pages, and it relates mostly to the animal feeding side. But if you read that and you understand what it does in the stomach of animals, it then really makes real logical sense what it does in soil. And I'd be glad to give you guys the link, and you can share that how you want, or you read it yourself. You won't read it in one setting. It's 60 pages, but it's really one of the best documents that I've seen that's packaged in a format of 112 papers connected to an industry. So I got Matt's email. I can send it to Matt, and he can forward it to you guys. So it's a great document. One of the best ones I've seen.
And we definitely like that.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so Phil, we're kind of running up short on time, but we'll give you an opportunity to say, leave us with some parting words of wisdom or whatever you'd like the listeners to hear out there as we close the podcast.
Yeah, I think any people that want to improve their soil, their health. I mean, this is kind of exciting times uh, for an industry that is just being adopted, so to speak, and it's good for the planet. It's good for people. It's good for animals. One thing that I didn't mention on the carbon credits, I mentioned that there's value there, but one important thing that you need to remember is for every ton of carbon that's put in the ground, biochar carbon, and that would be mixed with other ingredients, live organic matters, okay? If it's a real high quality carbon, we can absorb up to 3 tons of CO2 gas from that 1 ton of carbon that you put in the ground. And you all know that global warming is because we have a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. And it not only does the CO2 thing, but it does so much for the soil. But that's why the carbon credit was established, because it's the only economical way to really pull down CO2 efficiently. And so that's why the carbon credits have really been a big asset. And then also the USDA Forestry Service did a tremendous amount of research on planting seedlings with biochar from the thinning waste that they took out of the forest to keep the forest fires from spreading, the dead waste and the trees that aren't productive. And they liked the research so well that they adopted a program through the NRCS that you can Google called 336. And so the U.S. government, under the Biden administration, put out a subsidy program if you're in the EQIP conservation program, to where you can add biochar to soil. So the U.S. government has already pretty much approved that this biochar product is something that we need to do for agriculture. So that's another big statement for the industry. And I'm sure the Trump administration is evaluating it, and we'll find out what they're going to do with the new agricultural program. But I heard pretty positive things that they're going to look into that. But at least it has been proven to be accepted as a subsidy to help farmers put it in the ground.
Yep, that's great. We've looked into that ourselves, so that is a fact. Biochar is an approved EQIP practice, and that's cool that they've accepted that.
So it's just lack of education, unfortunately. We just don't have enough people out there talking about it. You know, people like you will help us out. Your podcast, getting the word out. This is a good thing, and I appreciate you having myself and my company on here.
Well, we thank you too, Phil, for joining us. That's about all the time we have for this episode. Again, very interesting stuff, and thanks for all you out there watching and listening to our biochar.
And thanks for listening to Modern Farming. Be sure to follow us and share, and join us again as we grow in the knowledge of the world that feeds us.